Hi, this is Cheryl McQueen, designer with Bello's Designs. Today's video is a lovely card featuring Lavinia's new cat named Luka, who sits on a wall and contemplates life as the sun rises. It also utilizes the Majemask stone wall stencil. I hope you enjoy following along with this tutorial. So let's take a look at the supplies that I'll be using today. We will be using the Lavinia Multifarious Smooth and Supreme cardstock. I have cut this piece to be 6.5 inches by 4.5 inches. Then we will have a frame around the card that I have just created out of a regular piece of cardstock. This one is cut to 6 3/4 by 4 3/4 inches. For our card base, I took a piece of cardstock and cut that to be 10 inches by 7 inches, and then I just folded that piece in half. The stamps that we'll be using today include the Lavinia Luka, which is this little cat here, and that is LAV 881. We will use the Lavinia Wild Leaf Corner. This one is LAV 885. We'll also be using the Lavinia Fern Leaf. This one is LAV 124. And then if you like, you can also add some little details below. I actually used a Lavinia Lavender LAV 093. I don't have the paper for this one as this was a gift for me. But there's also a lot of different varieties of flowers and foliage that you could use if you choose. For our stamping, we will be using the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And then for the colors, I have chosen to use Distress inks. We've got Carved Pumpkin, Wilted Violet, Chipped Sapphire, Pumice Stone, Hickory Smoke, Black Soot, Rustic Wilderness, and Pine Needles. And of course, you're welcome to choose to use any of the colors that you have on hand that are similar to these. We will also be using some blending brushes to add the color to our card. I just have some of these little blending brushes there. I'm also going to be using the Lavinia little small stencil brush. This one is number 3 to do some of the nicer, tighter areas on our stone work. You'll also need to go ahead and have a paintbrush on hand that you can use and a little bit of water. I will be using a stamping platform in order to not have to use magnets. You might be able to see here that I have used a sticky grid so that my cards will stick to it without having to worry about messing with the magnets. We will also use a fine tip black pen, and to put the card together I've chosen to use the adhesive running tape. You're welcome to use a paper glue as well. Also, I have a little small dauber on hand that I use to create some of my shadows. Alright, so let's get started working on our project. So as I mentioned earlier in my example, I have used the Lavinia Lavender LAV 093 in the lower right hand corner. I may end up leaving this out while we're making the tutorial because I really like the look of the clean stone wall with the lovely vine and leaf corner stamp here, but I'll see as we go along. But just know that you have this option to add any kind of additional little desires, little touches that you desire to add to it. So, all right, so let's start out by taking our Multifarious Smooth and Supreme cardstock, and I'm going to go ahead and place that on my stamping platform. I like to keep these little pieces of extra paper around so that in the event that my design is going to go outside of the area of the card, that way I don't get my sticky grid background all messy with it. Okay, so I've got this laid down. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the corner stamp. And I'm going to lay this into the lower left-hand corner. And just line that up there. And then we will ink up that stamp and go ahead and press down very hard when you do that. Get lots of nice, good, solid ink. So now we're going to stamp that and press the ink into our paper, giving it just a little bit of time to kind of get absorbed into it. One of the reasons that I love using a stamping platform is that if I don't get enough ink on there, then I can always go back and do a second stamping. Alright, I think that one turned out pretty well. I see a few little light places, so I am going to go ahead and just put a little bit more ink onto my stamp and do a second impression just to get a really good, crisp, sharp image. There we go. All right, so we can go ahead now and remove our art card from our stamping platform. We'll come back to the platform later, but that's all we're going to need for the moment. And now we're going to move on to getting ready to put our stone wall stencil down. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of paper and mask off the sky area. I'm actually going to go ahead and stick my card down. I like to do that with a little bit of painter's tape. That way it doesn't wiggle around while I'm trying to do my stencil work. So I'm going to lay that down, and then I'm going to take a piece of that scrap paper. Let me see if I can find one that's long enough here. And what I want to do is I just want to mask off where the sky and the stone wall will meet. So make sure I've got that straight. All right, now I'm going to take the pumice stone and we're going to take our blending brush and we're just going to lightly blend the pumice stone over the surface of the card. Be sure that you don't get too far in on your leaves here, because these little ones that are clear white right here, we're going to actually add some green coloring to in a little bit. Okay, so what this does is this basically puts down the color that will be like the mortar around the stone wall. So then we're going to get our Majemask stencil out. And we're going to lay this down. So that it just lines up kind of at the top of where our vine is there. Again, I like to tape that down so that it doesn't wiggle and get off while I'm doing the stenciling. I don't do a very good job at holding it in place without having some kind of little tight tape down to hold it. All right, so now we are going to move on to the hickory smoke. And with this one, we're going to go ahead and take our little small stencil brush. And with our little small stencil brush, we're just going to start dabbing around inside our little squares there. Now you can use a bigger one if you like, but the reason I like to do this is because I like to have some areas that are of the stone that are darker and other parts that are lighter. So this allows me to have just a little bit more control. So I don't know if you can see it very clearly here, but you can see I've got darker areas and lighter areas. If you also decided that you wanted to even make it a little bit darker, you're welcome to go back in and take some black soot and touch up in little areas too. But I like to just go ahead and leave it like this for now, and then we will see what we've got. So there you can kind of see that what I've done is I have pulled off our little masks here, and here is our product at this point. Now you notice I did not put any down over here where it was darker. I had it right in this area so that we could see the bricks, but not back here where it's covered up. Okay, so now that we've got that done, let's go ahead and kind of emphasize our bricks, our stones that are in our wall here. And with that, I'm going to take the fine tip black pen. It's very, 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 very tiny. I don't know if you can even see how tiny that is, but I like a really, really fine tip pen. I'm going to go ahead and remove the tape for the moment. And then you will see that what I'm going to do is just kind of start going around the edges of the brick. And I'm not necessarily going to outline the entire brick. I'm just, or the stone. I'm just going to kind of go around it just to emphasize a little bit. Just in little random areas. This just gives the brick a little bit more definition. And then I will go across the top as well. And because the stones are a little bit uneven in shape, I'm not going to worry about, for this edge, doing it a very straight line. We'll go back in just a minute and add another little edge that will designate the top of the stone wall. So now I'm just going to go ahead and go in here and finish drawing the outline around my bricks to give them some emphasis. Okay, so now we have kind of got those stones a little bit more defined there. And what we need to do is just go ahead and see if we can't do just a little tiny bit of a ledge here. And so I'm just actually going to take my stencil here and just do about a 1/2 inch, and then just draw a little bit of a stone ledge up there on the top. See if I can zoom in so that you can see that just a little bit better. Kind of makes the focus go off a little bit, but so you can see where I have done just a little bit of an edge there. And we're going to go back in and put a little bit of color into that. So let me zoom this back out just a little bit so that you can go ahead and still see the entire card here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take some of our hickory smoke, and I'm actually going to kind of go ahead and mask off that little area right there just to make sure I don't get it too much of an overlap. I'm going to take the hickory smoke and my little small stencil brush again. And I'm just going to go in and put that hickory smoke where my ledge is. That'll just distinguish it just a little bit from the mortar that's kind of around the stones. All right, so there now we've got our nice little stone wall and ledge there. So let's go ahead at this point and get some green color onto our little leaves here. So the two colors that we've got for that are the Rustic Wilderness and the Pine Needles. And I think that the easiest way that I want to do this, I think it works the best, is to just kind of do it almost like a little bit of a watercolor. So let me scoot this over just a tiny little bit so you can kind of see the white area right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit of water and squirt that down. And then I'm going to take some of the Rustic Wilderness. And we're just going to put a little bit of the Rustic Wilderness down on the surface so that we can dab in the water and then dab into the ink. And then just kind of get a nice base. And I'm just going to stay pretty much within where the dark area is. Try not to flow over into where your bricks are. But just kind of put a very light little base with this Rustic Wilderness over our surface here. I'm also going to go ahead and get some down here. I have just a little bit of an area at the bottom that's got some white, so we want to kind of create a little bit of a grassy color down there where our wall meets the ground. Okay, so once you just have a kind of a base color down, that's just to kind of get that little bit of a green in there. Then we're going to go ahead and move on to our darker color, the Pine Needles. And that's where we're just going to add just a few little accents to add some shadows to our leaves so that they don't look quite so flat with the color. So I put a little bit of that green down, a little bit more water, so that I can pick up the darker green with my paintbrush and just dash in some areas. We don't want to make it solid. This is just, again, to give a little bit of depth. Add some shadows. Just to give it a little bit of dimension. I don't know how well you can see that. Let's see if we can kind of show you where we've just added a little bit of the darker just to get a little bit of that less flat look. Now if you'd like to, and you've got a little heat tool, this does make your paper just a little wet, you can just kind of dry it up just for a second there. All right, so there we go. That just is just a nice little addition of color. Now I am going to go ahead and clean up my work surface so that I don't set anything down in that where I have my little ink there. Let's clean that up and get that out of our way. All right, and now let's go ahead and give just a little bit of dimension to our bricks as well. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and keep this moved over because we'll go ahead and use water with that. So I'm taking the black soot. Again, just putting a little bit down there on my work surface. A little bit of water. And then what we're going to do is just get this very lightly, and you're just going to kind of want to go around the bottom of your stones, maybe a little bit on the sides. But what we're doing here is just adding a little bit of shadow. If it's a little dark, then you can add more water. So you don't want it to be super stark, but you do want to kind of give that look of shadows that will create the little bit more dimensionality. And then we will also go up along the bottom of our ledge and put just a little bit of shadowing where the lip of our ledge is. Okay, so hopefully you can also see, let's see if we can show that to you there, where that's just a tiny little bit of color there underneath it will just help create some dimension. And when I take the picture at the end to show you what the finished product looks like, you'll probably be able to pick up on those shadows a lot easier. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and mask off our stone wall so that we can begin working on the sky portion. I'm going to go ahead and grab my little piece of tape that I had anchored this down with and just add it to that. I'm going to go ahead and do it a little bit lower since we'll be concentrating on the top part right now. And then I'm just going to line that up with the top of my stone wall. And we'll begin working on the colors for the sky. So I'm going to start out with the carved pumpkin. Then we'll move on from the carved pumpkin onto our wilted violet and then to our chipped sapphire. So you'll be able to see as I gradually build it up so that it looks like that the sun is just beginning to rise. Okay, so now we are ready to go ahead and remove our little mask there. And we've got our sky put in there. If you'd like to, you don't have to. If you would like to, you can even go ahead and add a few little stars that are kind of, I guess you could say, fading out as the night ends. And to do that, just take a little bit of your water in a mister bottle, give a brief little spritz, let it sit for just a second, and then you can just dab up. And you can get just a few little stars that are just left in the sky as the sun starts to rise. So now we're ready to go ahead and take our piece and put it back onto the stamping platform. I do have a little bit of ink here. Let me clean that up real quick so I don't get my elbow down in that. So we will take our stamping platform and put our card back down on that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and set aside our color inks because we don't need those anymore. And now we're going to take out Luka, our cat. Let's see, I've got Luka right here. And you just want to take him and set him slightly to the left-hand side. And just get it where he's sitting on the top of your wall there. Get him lined up. I want to make sure that I've definitely got him sitting on the top. And then we're going to stamp him. Now he's a little more solid stamp as well, so we may end up having to do it twice to get a good solid image. But let's see if I can get enough ink on there. Alright, not bad, but let's go ahead and put just a little bit more. I see a few little fainter areas. So put my final little bit of ink on the stamp. Press down really well. Get that paper a chance to absorb all the ink. And there we go. So now we're ready to move on and put in our tree branches around the edges. So I've got this stamp here, and I'm going to go ahead and have it come down a little bit lower onto the wall here, just so that we get a full coverage of tree. Now I am going to go ahead and take a little piece of paper like I did earlier to protect my sticky grid from the ink, and then I'm going to ink up that stamp, and we'll go ahead and do that off screen. Get that first branch placed in there. Alright. And then come up for one that's just a little bit higher up. Let's see how we want to angle that one. Maybe coming a little bit out of the corner there. I'm actually going to go ahead and move this down just a little bit, since I'm moving to work on the top of this card. And let's do one more, kind of coming down over on his other side. Maybe one about like that. Alright, so there, now we've kind of got that look of the trees, branches around on the edges. Now this is the point in time that you can decide, do you want to put any of the foliage like we've got down here with the lavender down here in this corner, or do you just want to leave it plain? And I may leave this one plain this time, just to let it kind of accent this little bit over here. Now the nice thing about this is too, if you don't put anything down here, this would be a really nice place if you wanted to put some kind of sentiment on your card. All right, so let's go ahead and take this off of our stamping platform. Set that aside. And now we're going to be ready to go ahead and put our card together. You know, and if you'd like to, I think I might just go ahead and stamp a sentiment just so we can kind of see what it looks like. So I'm going to grab one of those and then we will finish our card out. Well, I was hoping to be able to find the word dream. I'm pretty sure I've got it somewhere, but I haven't been able to find that stamp. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a very basic little hello stamp. I'll just put that down there. I wanted to make sure that I had one that was nice and bold so that it would show up really well on our little stone wall. So we'll just put that on there. We'll consider this a hello sunshine little saying. So I think this would have been really cool if I could have found that stamp that said dream, because that looks like our kitty cat there is dreaming. But that's okay. This one will work just as well. There we go. Let's see. See if I can get that top corner. Doesn't seem to want to. There we go. So that just shows you that if you want to put something, a little sentiment down there instead of the flowers, then you can do that. All right, so let's go ahead and put our card together now. So I'm basically just going to take my running tape. Let me cover that up so I don't stick my hand in it. And we'll grab the piece of cardstock that we cut out for our frame. I'm just going to use my running tape. And we'll get that centered on our little frame piece. There we go. And now we'll go ahead and do the same thing with our piece of cardstock for our card base. Right. Zoom that out just a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. And there is our finished card. Thank you so much for watching my video tutorial today. This card creates such a peaceful mood and is really very easy to make. I hope you will give this project a try. Be sure to remember to check out more tutorials on the design team page at delbellosdesigns.com. Have a great day.